Hi, Melanie. My name is Teza Mizitano. I'm completing my undergraduate degree in teaching secondary education and teaching English as a second language for a double major. And I feel so privileged to have taken part in so many activities. And I want to explain that I feel I've gained quite a bit of skills since September, and this gives me a lot of building blocks by which to start building already in my first semester a pretty solid foundation for my future career. And so it's going to be a little difficult to try to synthesize this in 15 minutes. However, I try to tackle it by allotting at least about 3 minutes for each competency, locating two key areas that I feel I've developed the most on pertinent to that competency, and then develop upon those key areas through the reflection, resource, and action model that we discussed in class. And then also try to find, of course, one key area of development that I want to improve on in the future. For the first competency, the key development I made was reconsidering the value of a teacher's authenticity and display of personality in a classroom. To reflect on this, I used the teacher man response because many times he felt that he was undervalued because he had lack of professionalism, because he was different than other teachers, and other teachers valued subject matter over anything. But in fact, I feel that he had the most professionalism because he was able to walk into any demographic of students and create an authentic experience by which they could learn English, whether it was excuse notes or cooking books. And my resources and the skills that I learned was that professionalism is not governed by a by the book approach, and just because you're a little goofy or you bring your personality to class does not make you less of a professional. It just makes you have authentic learning experiences that are going to be more positive than if they were rigid. To display this, I would want to bring my humorous and authentic personality to the classroom and make jokes, because in the context of high school, also, this is where you want to create positive relationships with learning. Again, for the first competency, the key development, second key development was I reconsidered the value of showing an interest in your students' interests. I saw at New Horizons a classroom where instead of walking in, the teacher began, instead of walking in and saying, open your notebooks to page 4, we'll do exercise 1 through 6. The teacher walked in and said, what did you guys do this weekend? I went for a walk, I did other stuff, and tell me what you did. This way it really shows that you have an interest in your students, and this way you can also use those interests to make more creative learning experiences. And to so this is a new skill that I learned about, was to be receptive to those interests and be able to integrate them into learning activities. And I would display that by providing a learning environment with an interactive approach, whether it's with me or whether it's between students. So the best is to incite communication between the students, and also in a second language classroom such as English. This way, students can also share their experiences that they might be finding difficult while they're integrating or facing inclusion barriers. So this way it really creates an inclusive environment and culture for your classroom. And what I would want to develop is to continually find more creative ways to incorporate these two skills of personality and interests in students' interests. For the second competency, a key development I made in communication was I realized the broad variety of new vocabulary that I had learned, especially from the chapter readings and the chapter responses. So the new skill I acquired was how to integrate those new vocabularies that I was learning that were pertinent to the field of education into my reading responses, and I would try to incorporate them as much as I could in other contexts, in other classes, such as the head teacher application or also the field observations. And I would also try to observe what kind of language the teachers were using during the observations. That way I could really learn what kind of language was approachable and what kind of language was clear and concise and was pertinent to the field of education. And I would want to apply this by continuously engaging that new vocabulary into future projects that I do in the program, and continuously also using it as I converse with teachers and with other students and my future colleagues to see how effective those new vocabulary words are, and maybe I can learn more vocabulary also from them. Again, for the second competency, another key development was I reevaluated the value of having clear and concise explanations in your work. So not only using the right vocabulary, but knowing when to use it and how much of it and in what context. So if I was to communicate a lesson plan to a fellow teacher, I wouldn't communicate it the way I would explicitly communicate it in a classroom, because the vocabulary would be overwhelming for the student, and that's you want to create a comprehensive environment, especially when they're learning a language. And then you can model how to use that new language appropriately without everything being too wordy. And this I observed a lot, especially in the field observations. I observed how teachers communicated in a concise way, not only with pertinent vocabulary, and also in my head teacher application. The skill I learned is you really have to make an outline for everything that you do. So I would make a topic sentence, use the quotations if needed that I would put under that paragraph. However, I noticed in myself a key area of improvement that I need to apply is to be more concise, because that's what takes a lot of time out of my work. Is I have so much information that I want to deliver, but I don't do it in a concise manner. It's just way too long. So, for example, this is a backstage preview. During the head teacher application, I ended up mapping out all my values for the vision. I even started writing out how my curriculum would take place, how I would integrate the core subjects, and then make new kinds of classrooms so I could emphasize the transferability of skills like I had read in chapter 5. And so I really need to improve on this, because it ended up being 4 pages and it was just too long. So it's so important to communicate the right message concisely. That way the message does so much more of an impact. For competency 11, a key development I noticed in myself in this semester was the value of reviewing and renewing yourself, and also the information that you're accessing and that you're acquiring. So during the traditional versus revolutionary debate, I understood how important it was to apply a holistic view to the arguments that I was accessing, and how I was presenting my own arguments in an inclusive manner. At first I was 100% revolutionary, but then I realized the importance of also integrating traditional values that were brought up by my teammates, so that it's important also to the foundation of a revolutionary approach, because this way we can critically analyze the tradition of education, and it is important to keep some core factors. This way the progression of the revolutionary approach isn't so dramatic between its steps. So I would want to continue to gain awareness of historical and philosophical aspects of education as a field, and be able to integrate those into my knowledge and my views, and be able to embed it in my pedagogical application of those views, and do so in a constructive and inclusive manner. For competency 11, a second key development I made was to no longer act as so much of a receptor of information, but to also be able to create a dialogue by which both of the parties can learn from. So during the pamphlet presentations, rather than just listening to my teammates, I actually actively tried to exercise how I would act with a student and help them develop and make connections with their topic and themselves. So I would ask questions to my colleagues. Why would you choose that? Why did you choose that topic? How does it personally relate to you? And how do you see this applied in the new field? To really get some spontaneous responses from them as well, and to learn from that. And so I learned the skill of of having meaningful and intellectual exchanges of information, and how to do so in an inclusive manner. For competency 12, the first key development I noticed was the importance of embedding ethical values into your practice and into how you present yourself and your own arguments. So during the field observations, I really tried to watch how teachers were displaying those ethical values and embedding it in their work that went beyond the target learning areas. And this way, teachers can model those ethical values and model it for the students, so the students can not only apply it to their work, but also internalize those values, and they can be transferred in the broader view of a society. And also in the head teacher application, I realized how important it was. Like I read in Parquet Al's book about the curriculum. So there's the explicit, there's the implicit, and then there's also the null curriculum, where it's about the skills that you haven't really tapped into yet. And I think that's extremely pertinent to embedding ethical information into your work as a teacher. And also to this way you can help the student conceptualize how learning can be applied to real life struggles and real life situations. And for competency 12, the second key development was it's so important to continuously renew and review your ethical foundations to why you value certain decisions and what is being valued in your decisions. Are you sure you're transmitting the correct information? And also I think it's important to do that in the field at a personal level, but also it's so important to develop it through active dialogue, because that way certain ethical ideas can move forth in a collective manner through educational agency as a whole, so that the body of teachers really does have a voice, and it's not just being ruled by more of a profit-based industry, which is not ideal. So and this was really through my research paper, I learned the value of giving critical access to the English language through providing critical access materials. So to realize the embedded discrepancies between the real world and what the media might provide. That way students can really access this information in a critical way. Also in high school, in the culture, there'll be a lot of access to technology. I mean, there's so many things that you can see on the internet. So if you can incorporate those values of critical access in the classroom, then students won't just believe everything that they read. It's so important to actively inquire, not only in what you read and the external information, but also inquire internally. And I think that's so important to a teacher, to be able to grow and to be able to role model that, so that these values are also incorporated into the society of tomorrow. And so and this is what I would want to improve, is to really know myself and know my ethical foundation and be able to do so receptively in dialogue with others. The take home from the semester was, once I would visualize myself now on the other side of the classroom, I want to act more as a facilitator. So give clear instructions at first, and then have activities that emphasize communication between the students, and just act as a facilitator if ever they needed help with some certain vocabulary in an English classroom. And because I think it's so important that tomorrow we continue to value active communication and in a constructive manner, and also an inclusive manner. And the key area I want to develop on is the projection of my voice and making it very much more believable and much more meaningful, and also to keep my work way more concise and give myself better structure, because I would love to communicate meaning and giving it more of an impact and allowing it to have more memorability. And it's so important I realize when teaching an English language, not to have so much information into one class, but have just really concise key points that are repeated during the week, so that memorability is emphasized in the classroom. So thank you so much, and I will see you next semester.